Right now, your brain is lying to you. Every single morning, it convinces you that you need just 5 more minutes of sleep, 5 more minutes of scrolling, and 1 more cheap dose of dopamine before you finally start working on your dreams. You believe you are just lazy. You believe you lack the genetic willpower to achieve greatness. But the truth is far more terrifying. Your mind has been hijacked. You are living as a prisoner in a hyper-stimulated trap, where your focus has been broken into pieces by design. The ancient Stoics and Eastern ascetics knew a secret that modern society desperately tries to hide. Discipline is not a personality trait. It is a state of absolute psychological isolation. They called it the fortress of the self. Today we call it monk mode. It is the brutal, uncompromising decision to legally disappear from the radar of society, to starve your distractions, and to force your brain into an unbreakable state of deep execution. But here is the catch. Most people think monk mode is only for the highly disciplined. They are wrong. Today we are going to do something radical. We are going to show you how to trick, bypass, and forcefully drag your brain into monk mode, even if you are currently the most undisciplined, exhausted and lazy person in existence. We are not going to give you superficial productivity hacks or tell you to just try harder. We are going to rewiring your neurology using cold, calculating Stoic laws and modern psychological warfare. If you are comfortable remaining average, turn this video off right now. But if you are tired of watching your potential rot in the shadows of your own laziness, sit still, cut the noise, and empty your mind. The doors to the monastery are closing. Let us begin. Laziness is not a permanent character flaw, nor is it a sign that you are fundamentally broken. It is a highly sophisticated, evolutionary trap designed to keep you safe, comfortable, and ultimately powerless. The modern world has weaponized this evolutionary trait against you, creating a hyper-stimulated ecosystem where your focus is actively hijacked for profit. Every single day you wake up intending to change your life, only to find yourself paralyzed on your bed, staring at a glass screen, drowning in a relentless downpour of cheap dopamine. You tell yourself that you are lazy, that you lack the genetic willpower of the great achievers, and that you will simply try harder tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes, because your brain is currently running on a corrupted operating system. When Marcus Aurelius sat down in his military tent nearly 2,000 years ago to write his personal journals, he noted that a man's greatest battle is never against an external enemy, but against the chaotic, uncultivated desires of his own mind. Your brain is not broken, it is simply operating under the law of least resistance. In nature, energy conservation is survival. If your brain realizes it can attain the highest levels of neurological reward, dopamine, by simply moving a thumb across a screen, it will fiercely reject the agonizing labor of reading a complex book, learning a difficult skill, or building a sovereign empire from scratch. Laziness is merely your brain choosing the cheapest currency available. Monk mode is the brutal, systematic, and calculated decision to completely devalue that currency. It is a declaration of total psychological martial law, where you legally disappear from the grid of societal noise, starve your primal instincts, and force your neurology into a state of absolute execution. You do not need to flee to a literal cave in the Himalayas to achieve this. You must build that cave inside your own skull, turning your mind into an untouchable internal fortress where distractions go to die. The first and most unyielding rule of forcing a lazy brain into this state of hyper-focus is the absolute dictatorship of your environment. Lazy people consistently make the fatal mistake of relying on willpower, believing that through sheer mental strength they can resist temptation. This is a scientific delusion. Willpower is a finite, highly unstable biological resource that depletes with every single choice you make throughout the day. If you sit at a desk with your smartphone buzzing next to you, with 14 open tabs on your browser, and with the constant chatter of the world ringing in your ears, you have already lost the war before firing a single shot. Your environment will always break your willpower if it is designed for comfort. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously taught that if you wish to control your mind, you must first master the parameters of what surrounds you. You must structure your immediate reality in a way that makes your success inevitable and your failure mechanically impossible. Monk mode requires you to systematically eliminate the paradox of choice. An option to distract oneself will always be chosen by a lazy brain. Therefore, you must create a negative space, an environment so stark, so devoid of cheap stimulation, that the act of working becomes the easiest path for your brain to take. When you aggressively power down your phone, lock it in a completely separate room, disable the internet, and sit facing a blank wall with nothing but your task in front of you, a profound shift occurs. Your brain, suddenly starved of its expected hourly dopamine hit, will experience a wave of intense boredom. Human psychology cannot tolerate absolute emptiness for long. Eventually, your mind will look at the difficult task before it not as a painful chore, but as the only available escape from the agony of doing nothing. By engineering an environment of extreme scarcity, you effectively trick your lazy brain into deep execution. As you step deeper into this engineered silence, your mind will inevitably launch a violent internal rebellion. In modern psychology, this is known as the withdrawal phase of a dopamine detox. In ancient philosophy, it was recognized as the primal taming of the inner beast. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, noted that the true metric of a man's sovereignty is his ability to remain completely unbothered by the internal turbulence of his own mind. When you deny your brain its daily ration of digital validation, video games, and instant gratification, it will scream at you. It will invent brilliant, highly rationalized lies to convince you to break your isolation. It will tell you that you are too tired to work today, that you need to check an urgent email, or that you should start fresh on Monday. This is the precise moment where 99% of the population breaks. They mistake the discomfort of transition for a genuine physical need. To survive this mental storm, you must learn to practice the Stoic art of cognitive detachment. You must become a silent, objective observer of your own thoughts. When a wave of laziness or an intense urge to distract yourself arises, do not fight it, do not argue with it, and do not succumb to it. Simply look at it. Say to yourself, "My brain is currently experiencing a craving for dopamine, and it is trying to trick me into comfort." By labeling the thought, you separate your true identity from the passing storm. You realize that you are not the voice inside your head. You are the awareness that hears the voice. If you can simply sit still and endure that initial 20-minute wave of psychological friction without moving from your chair, the neural storm will pass, the craving will subside, and your brain will quietly surrender to the reality of the work. The supreme secret to making monk mode functional for an extremely lazy individual lies in the absolute mastery of micro-execution. When an undisciplined mind looks at an overwhelming, monumental goal, such as writing a 10,000-word script, mastering a complex language, or transforming their entire physical body, the sheer magnitude of the objective triggers the brain's amygdala. The brain perceives the scale of the task as a threat, a massive expenditure of energy that yields no immediate reward, and it immediately deploys laziness as a defense mechanism to keep you safe in your comfort zone. Stoicism solves this paralysis through the practice of radical present-moment reduction. Marcus Aurelius constantly commanded himself to break his life down into the single, passing second, reminding his consciousness that the future does not exist and the past is dead. There is only the infinite now. To bypass your brain's defensive anxiety, you must completely stop thinking about the grand finish line. You must reduce the task down to an action so laughably small, so incredibly effortless, that your lazy brain cannot possibly find an excuse to reject it. Do not tell your brain you are going to work for 4 hours. Tell your brain you are simply going to open the document and write one single sentence. Do not tell yourself you are going to go for an intense run. Tell yourself you are just going to put on your shoes and stand outside the door. This microscopic commitment bypasses the brain's alarm systems because it requires almost zero energy. However, once you take that first, microscopic step, a powerful physical law takes over, the law of momentum. A mind in motion tends to stay in motion. Once the document is open and the first line is written, the friction of starting vanishes. The heavy stone of procrastination begins to roll, and 5 minutes of tricking your brain effortlessly evolves into hours of deep, uninterrupted flow. To sustain this momentum through the darker, heavier days of your isolation, you must anchor your consciousness in the profound Stoic concept of amor fati, the radical love of one's fate. Laziness is often deeply intertwined with a hidden toxic form of perfectionism. We delay taking action because we are terrified of doing a poor job, or because we feel that our current energy levels, our moods, or our external circumstances are not absolutely perfect. We sit around waiting for an elusive wave of internal inspiration to strike us before we begin. Monk mode completely eradicates this emotional dependency. An authentic practitioner of this philosophy understands that inspiration is a luxury for amateurs. Professionals rely purely on structure. Amor fati demands that you accept your current state of exhaustion, your laziness and your chaotic emotions, not as an excuse to quit, but as the exact raw material provided by the universe for your training. If you wake up feeling heavy, unmotivated, and deeply lazy, you do not wait for the feeling to pass. You look at that resistance and you embrace it. You tell yourself, this resistance is my workout. Today, my task is not just to do the work, but to do the work while feeling completely miserable. When you learn to love the friction, when you treat the very feeling of laziness as a weight that you are lifting in the gymnasium of the mind, you become completely untouchable. You no longer need to feel good to perform at a world-class level. You simply execute regardless of the weather inside your soul. This silent, solitary execution requires you to build a wall of total obscurity around your life, cutting off the catastrophic leak of your mental energy through social broadcasting. The modern individual is obsessed with showing the world their progress. They post about their workouts, they tweet about their goals, and they broadcast their minimal achievements to gain a quick, cheap hit of social validation. This is a fatal mistake for a lazy brain. When you tell someone about your grand plans, or when you post about your new productivity routine online, your brain receives a premature release of dopamine. It confuses the praise of the intention with the actual satisfaction of the achievement. As a result, your deep internal drive is starved, and when you finally sit down to do the actual hard work, you find yourself completely empty of motivation. Monk mode demands absolute silence. It requires you to operate entirely in the dark. Let the world think you have fallen off. Let them think you have grown distant. And let them think you are ignorant or left behind. Epictetus warned his students that if they genuinely desired inner wisdom and power, they had to be completely comfortable appearing foolish, simple, or utterly irrelevant in the eyes of society. There is an immense, almost supernatural reservoir of power that accumulates when you work day after day in a closed room, telling absolutely no one what you are building. This quiet, unexpressed energy builds up like steam inside a sealed boiler, and its only way out is through the massive, explosive execution of your work. Ultimately, the ultimate hammer that will forever shatter the chains of your laziness and lock your brain into monk mode is the unflinching, daily meditation on memento mori, the constant remembrance of your inevitable death. Laziness can only exist when a human being operates under the profound psychological illusion that they have infinite time. We procrastinate, we waste hours on meaningless activities, and we allow our potential to rot in the sun because we subconsciously believe there will always be another year, another month, or another day to fix our lives. Death exposes this belief as a tragic lie. Every single morning when you open your eyes, you must confront the brutal reality that this day could very well be your final 24 hours on this earth. This is not a depressing thought. It is the ultimate, most liberating filter for human action. When you look at your life through the lens of your imminent demise, the petty excuses of laziness instantly evaporate. Does it make any sense to spend the precious, limited moments of your existence lying paralyzed in a dopamine trap, watching other people live their lives through a digital screen? Are you truly willing to let the final chapter of your story be a narrative of unrealized potential and quiet regret? Marcus Aurelius used this thought every single morning to drag himself out of his warm bed, telling himself that he was rising to do the work of a human being, the work he was specifically created to do before returning to the dust. Death burns away all the superficial noise, all the hesitation and all the laziness of the mind, leaving behind nothing but the pure, unadulterated urgency of the present moment. The time for consuming theory is now over. The gates of the monastery are closing, and the transition from a passive observer to an active warrior must occur within your neurology this very second. Stand up from your place of comfort. Take your digital devices and bury them where they cannot tempt your gaze. Shut the door to the outside world and stare directly into the eyes of your chosen task. Your brain will undoubtedly attempt one last desperate rebellion. It will whisper that you are still too lazy, that you lack the energy, and that you should rest. Ignore that deceptive voice with an icy, stoic detachment. You are no longer a slave to the cheap chemical whims of your brain. You are the sovereign ruler of your internal empire, and you have chosen the path of low-profile, absolute power. Immerse yourself completely in the magnificent, healing darkness of your silent execution. Labor with an intense, quiet devotion through every passing second, and let the world remain completely blind to your struggle until the undeniable, towering monument of your success completely shatters the silence of their ignorance. Enter your fortress, embrace the friction, and force your mind into monk mode today.